Welcome to another episode of Jay Leno's Garage. Well, it's finally finished. My 1962 Maserati 3500 GTI, which of course stands for fuel injection. This has been about almost a 2-year restoration. We've had a few things in between. This car was a barn find. It had been in a storage lockup since 1981. Here's what it looked like when we first got it. It looked pretty good. The paint and everything was perfect, but it needed a lot of work, 100,000 miles. Well, the next step was to get it running. Maserati was a successful company, certainly in reputation and in racing, but they weren't making a lot of money, and they needed a road car. And this is what they came up with. And Maserati went to England, and they tried to find the best components they could get at the time. They used Girling disc brakes, they used Lucas fuel injection, they used ZF gearbox from Germany, Salisbury rear end. They realized it would cost them a lot to develop all their own, so let's buy the best components we can. They developed their own chassis, their own engine, their own body. And being a fuel-injected car, I believe this was the very first Italian fuel-injected car. I believe it was. I could be wrong. If you know different, let me know. But certainly mass-produced, or as mass-produced as a car like this could be. Most people got it with Webers, and nowadays when you find one that's injected, most people convert it to Webers because it's too much trouble to get this fuel injection to run correctly. But not for our guys. Our guys did a great job. Jim Hall, Jim, come on in. Jim will tell you about some of the trials and tribulations of getting this fuel injection. As much as I love Webers, the Webers put out about 220 horse, and this is about 240 with the injection. But who was Kinsler? Who do we deal with?
Kinsler.
Kinsler, and they're out of Detroit. Was it Detroit? Yeah. They helped us with the fuel injection. Tell us some of the problems we had.
Well, when I first started tried to start it, it only ran on 3 cylinders. It turned out there's a thing called a shuttle inside the metering unit. One of those was stuck. I took all that apart. There were no diagrams, so you just had to, it's like, oh, how'd this come apart?
Yeah.
Put it back together, got it running on all 6, and then we had this problem with this really high idle speed.
Right.
And so I got a hold of the guys at Kinsler, and it's like, oh, well, tell you what, send us the metering unit, as well as the fuel pumps needed overhaul. So we ship all that back to Kinsler. They completely overhaul it. They flow bench it. They do all the trick stuff. Huge bill for you.
Right.
Comes back, we put it on the dyno, and we still have a high idle speed. It's like, okay, well, it's in the throttle butterflies, and I did all the magic I could for throttle butterflies. Still had a high idle speed. Well,
you know what we'll do? Let's take a break. Let's show you. We'll show you how we fix the problem. But here's Jim in the dyno room. Here we are in the dyno room running the engine for the very first time. So this was pretty exciting. And then the problems came a little bit later. But here, take a look. But that wasn't the end of the high idle problem.
No, and my hope was, I'd gotten the idle down to 1250, 1300 on the dyno, and it's like, oh, hopefully we can drive it. Right. We get it in the car, because I was thinking, well, when you got a transmission, a little more friction,
yeah,
it'll be fine. Problem was, it now was up at like 1800.
Right.
And, you know, I wanted to mention, this was a great team effort.
Yeah.
George worked his fanny off.
No, well, you know, I've seen George's rear end, and he's got a lot more work to do. But he worked very hard on this car.
George went through the brakes, so we've got rebuilt brake master cylinders, clutch slave cylinders, master cylinder, brakes themselves.
George must have had that injection unit on and off a half a dozen times. And then we went to our friend Mike Pierce, right?
Yeah.
Pierce
Manifold.
Pierce Manifold. You know, I can't thank these guys enough. There's these small companies like Pierce Manifold, and they are specialists in unusual things like this, in fuel injection, in carburation.
They took the manifold, they bored all 6 throats out. They made throttle butterflies for it to fit the bored out throats, put everything back together. And that's been enough to bring us into the range where now you can drive this car.
Yeah, now we can drive it, and it runs fine. It makes all kinds of power. Then we had some suspension problems as well, but we got that taken care of thanks to the folks at Bilstein.
This is off of a Ford Explorer is what this started life as.
Correct.
This one started life off of an Isuzu Trooper.
Correct.
But because these are rebuildable shocks, they could then take them apart, do that custom valving. So we come up with something that works on this sort of orphan Maserati 3500 GT that nobody had any data on.
Well, let's open the hood and show people exactly what we got here. Okay, as you can see, great looking engine, twin cam, 2-valve. The folks at Be Cool, we did a web shoot with them once before. They make terrific products. They built this radiator for us, so it runs dead cool. You can't get it to overheat. And once again, this car did have factory air conditioning, but Italian air conditioning in 1962 was, we called it an open window, but it did have air conditioning. But we replaced that with a vintage air unit. And you know, they're just the best. Vintage air, we put that in every single car we have. Look how small the unit is. It fits under almost any hood. And that alternator, Jim, we replaced the generator that was in the car. Bernard did a wonderful job on these mounts. And of course, you can see George got the fuel injection in. And of course, you have your porcelain headers. We haven't touched those. Those are all original. We changed the wires. The original wires.
Well, they were solid core, and you would end up getting a lot of radio noise.
Right.
And specifically on our Go-Power dyno, it'll kill the dyno. The electronics don't like the RF.
Right.
So that's why we have these blue wires on there.
And of course, our Lucas unit. I'm so proud of the guys. It would have been so much easier and faster just to stick a set of Webers on there and open the hood and go, ooh, ah, Webers, and look pretty cool. But you get a little bit of mileage and a little more horsepower with the Lucas fuel injection. And this is what the car came with, so it made it exciting to have it back on there. George and Bernard, they made a mount for our air cleaner, so it fits right under the front wheel there. This engine had close to 100,000 miles on it, but it's still pretty good, wasn't it?
Well, we ended up thinking that maybe at some point it might have been overhauled.
Yeah, yeah.
When we had it on the dyno, it made good power.
Right.
And it's like, well, there's no reason to take something apart.
Yeah, if it's running fine. Yeah, yeah.
We did the valve clearances, and it runs good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Let's put the hood down. This, of course, is what they call that Superleggera lightweight construction. Let's go to the back of the car. We obviously put a brand new exhaust system in the car, stainless steel. This is the way the pipes came out on this car. It doesn't look stock, but that's the way they did it. And I love all this sort of script, GTI, Maserati gold, and silver here. And a massive trunk in this thing. There we go. We have our battery in the trunk here, battery disconnect switch. You always want to put a disconnect switch in, especially in an Italian car. You know, Italian electrics, most of the wires didn't go through a loom. They just ran to the chassis, and after years of the wires rubbing back and forth on the road, they short out and they catch fire. So you always want to, especially if you don't rewire it, you always want to put one of these battery disconnect switches in. But as you can see, spare tires under here and jack. So there's plenty of room in the car. We moved our air conditioning to the back. Originally the car was in the front. Just make things a little neater up front. This is kind of cool. I love the fact that this rear window opens here as well. It does have a back seat. I don't know who's supposed to sit back there, but it is called a 2+2, but it's really a two-seater car. Classic Italian steering wheel, 5-speed gearbox, of course. You know, 5-speed was a huge deal in 1962. Most cars only had 4. In fact, most of them, when you bought a Corvette or a Mustang, it was a 3-speed, and then you paid extra, for the 4-speed. But 5-speed, stop, you're killing me. We'll go over the instruments when we take it for a drive. In fact, it's probably time to go for a drive right now. It's a full-size car, certainly by Italian standards. And if you got long legs like I do, you can really get comfortable, all kinds of room. You know, although it's horribly sexist, this is what they would have called back in the day a man's car, in the sense that it takes a bit of heft to move it. The clutch is heavy, certainly by conventional standards, and you've got to be quite deliberate with your gear shift throws. You know, mag wheels are nice, but there's nothing like a set of Barani wire wheels. Aren't they beautiful with a 3-prong knockoff? Well, the first thing you want to do when you restore a car like this, especially something that's been sitting for 30, 40, 50 years, replace the radiator. Just do it. You know, you could boil out your old one, but for the most part, the best thing, have a nice aluminum radiator made to original specifications, or at least buy one that's close, because this, I can't get this thing to overheat. Nicely laid out dashboard, speedometer there, water temperature, fuel, oil pressure, oil temperature, barely moved. Of course, your tachometer right here, windshield washers, lights, clock, everything works. Fancy German radio, AM, FM radio, which was a huge deal in 1962. We have our vintage air conditioning unit. It's kind of cool, the purple. I love this grab bar here. This is one of my favorite things. You know, this was considered a luxury-equipped grand touring car. Had electric windows, which most cars, certainly not Italian cars, did not have. Cigarette lighter, you're Italian, you gotta have your cigarette lighter. Steering is very direct. The exception of the brakes, there's really no power assist on this car of any kind. You can really feel the pedigree to this motor when you drive the car. You know, in America, we perfected the V8, but the straight six, boy, the Europeans did some great ones. Certainly the Jag, and this Maserati, and of course the Aston Martin. But this is just a great motor. Great looking motor, great sounding motor. Very powerful, very torquey. You know, 240 horsepower doesn't sound like much now, but it was, that was quite powerful back in 1962. You know, it's funny, this thing is about halfway between the invention of the car and where we are now. Because the car really came into its own about 1910. By 1962, this was the height of sophistication. And now, of course, you have, well, fuel injection was considered so exotic back in the day, but now it's pretty standard. Still need to do a bit of work to this car. Second gear kind of jumps out of second gear a little bit, so we probably need a new second gear. But other than that, everything else is just about as it should be. And it loves to rev. You gotta do the arm out the window. As you can see, this thing's a lot of fun to drive, but it's really a grand touring car. Let's take it up on the freeway and see how she cruises. You know, we've never been out of third gear. This thing is so long-legged. Third gear will take you well over 100 miles an hour. So let's take it up on the freeway, drop it in fifth, and see what kind of revs we're pulling. See how long-legged this thing is. Fifth gear, 70-something miles an hour, barely turning 3,000 RPM. It's a good cruiser. This is the road car that really, I think, helped set Maserati on its way. It was a moneymaker for them. It was successful, and it helped them build their reputation too, because these were not cheap cars. This car was $13,000 brand new, when an XKE was maybe $4,300, something like that. So almost 3 times the price of an XKE. Cost by the same count, you could have bought a Ferrari GTO for almost the same price back in the day, and that'd be worth $30 million now. So, yeah. As I mentioned earlier, we looked at a DB5 Aston Martin that was totally rusted out. The guys said, we won't even restore it, it's too far gone. And it sold for $186,000. This car, although mechanically it needed work, the paint was perfect, the chrome was perfect, it was $25,000 sitting in a storage unit. I think this is one of the bargains of the century, and if you ever get a chance to pick up one of these Maseratis, just grab it. They'll do nothing but go up in value. Benissimo! As you can see, pretty cool car, especially for the money we paid for it. And you know, if you ever, as I said, you see one of these old Maseratis around, grab it, because they will go up. They will just go up in value. I think this is one of the most undervalued cars of all time, primarily because people don't understand them, but they're pretty straightforward to work on and wonderful to drive, and of course, great looking. So that's it for this resto. We'll see you next week.